right, welcome to another podcast. Today we're going to be talking about pricing and claims. Two very important aspects of the business, obviously. The pricing is difficult. So there's two different aspects of the pricing. You got customer pricing and you got carrier pricing. So we'll start with the carriers. Let's say that you have an offer from a client. You know, you've done your research, you got a book of business going, or you have a prospect that you're talking to, and they email you a load offer, or you're talking to them and he says or she says, hey, I got a load that's picking up out of, South Texas and I need you to bring it to Michigan. Okay, so you get a few details on that. One is, when does it pick up? That's important because they may be talking today. They may be talking next month. The prices are going to vary. The market fluctuates. So first thing you want to do is gather the information from the client about the load or the prospect about the load. So first thing you're going to ask is, when does it pick up? Get that information first. When does it deliver? And the reason you want to know when it delivers is because you need to know if you need a solo driver or if you need a team driver. If it's a 2-day transit, you're not going to use a solo driver on that. I mean, the drivers are on ELDs. A solo driver is not going to be able to go from Texas to Michigan in 1 day. So you're going to need a team driver on that, and that's also going to affect your price. It's going to be more because you got 2 drivers in the truck. You're not paying 1 guy, you're paying 2 guys. So when does it pick up? When does it deliver? Determine if you need a solo driver or if you need a team driver. And then you also want to know the weight of the shipment because that does play a difference. I mean, the more weight on a truck, obviously the more wear and tear on a truck. Carriers take that into consideration. Also, the more fuel they're using. The heavier the load, the more fuel they're using. So get the weight of the truck, and that's also a good selling point. If it's a lower weight shipment, then you can use that in negotiating a better price. So get the weight of the shipment. If it's a refrigerated shipment, get the temperature of the shipment, because again, that plays into the refrigeration unit running.
Yeah.
It takes more fuel, more diesel. So get the temperature of the freight, and then once you have that information, now you want to go out and you want to source the carrier and you want to get some pricing. There's a lot of different ways to go out there and get pricing. I'm sure everybody on here is familiar with DAT. If you're not, DAT has a really good tool on there called Rate Matrix, and they have this new feature called Rate Cast.
Okay.
And Rate Cast is an AI-generated hypothetical. We feel like this is where the rates are going to go.
Yeah.
So DAT's been in business for a long time, and they've collected years and years of data on rates. So people that sign up for DAT, for their subscription to DAT Load Board and DAT Rate View and Rate Cast, they agree to have their TMS capture the rates that they're paying. So they integrate that into DAT, and then DAT uses that data to forecast rates or to show rates that are being paid. And that's really helpful for anybody out there because you can see what other companies are paying. And there's a little report up in the upper right-hand corner there that says, hey, on this lane, this is the low that we've seen paid, this is the high that we've seen paid, and this is how many companies that we got samples from. So that's important too. Let's say you're looking on the Texas to Michigan lane and you see a low rate of 4,500 and a high rate of 5,800. Now that's a pretty wide range, but a lot of factors go back into play there. One, the weight, the temperature. Was it a team driver? Was it a solo driver? So you got to take that into play. That information is not shared on there, just the low and the high. And then also how many companies are reporting. Let's say you only have 3 companies reporting. Okay, so that's very low for that range. That's very low. So that tells me a couple things. One, it tells me somebody had the load, if they're at the 4,500 range, they had that load, well in advance, one, and they probably had a very good carrier that they used regularly that did it for a reasonable amount that was traveling that lane or needed that lane. And on the high end of it, it tells me maybe somebody got in a pinch and they had to load it the same day that they got the load for whatever reason. Maybe a carrier fell off, or maybe they got the load late and they underbid it, but they had to get the freight moving. So what they did is they bought the truck. So they made sure they got the truck and they serviced the client. So if you see a range like that and you see companies, low number of companies reporting, take that into consideration when you're pricing it out there. But now that you've seen that and you see the low, you see the high, okay, that's a pretty big range, so I don't know really where to quote on that. So now what you want to do is you want to go on there and you want to take a look at the trucks that are posted on there, trucks that are actually looking on that lane. When you go onto DAT, you can search it from an origin region. Let's say the load was picking up in McAllen, Texas. You can do straight McAllen, Texas, 25-mile radius, and see how many trucks are in that area posted that want to go up to Michigan. If you don't get any good results, then widen your search. Maybe you go out 50 miles, maybe you go out 150 miles, and you get more trucks, more results that are posted up. Now keep in mind, the farther that you go out and find a truck, let's say you expanded that search to 150 miles outside of McAllen, you may find trucks that are all the way over in Laredo, Texas. That's about a 2-hour drive, 2.5-hour drive by truck. You're gonna know, if you're gonna source the truck from Laredo, Texas, that your rate's gonna be a little bit more, because they have to do what is called deadhead. They're driving over there with their truck empty to pick up your load. And so they're taking a risk there too, because who's to say when they get there that the load didn't cancel or whatever the case may be. So they're gonna charge you more to deadhead down there. So what you wanna do is you wanna jump on, once you got that list of carriers, is you wanna call and get some sample pricing. Call the carriers, tell them the lane, tell them the specifics of the lane that you gathered, when it picks up, when it delivers, temperature of the load, weight of the load, and ask them what they need for a rate. I mean, do your negotiation. If you have a rate in mind that you want to be at based on what you saw, you know, you got the 45 and the 58, they may say, what are you offering? Start low. You can always go up, but you can never come back down. And you don't want to leave money on the table.
Right.
You don't want to throw out $5,800 and be like, yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah.
If they say that immediately, you know you left money on the table. They would have done it for cheaper. So you want to start out low. It's a negotiation, just like it is with the client. You may say $4,500 and they say, oh, no, I can't do it for that. Okay, what's your price? That's your opportunity to ask them directly. They may counter with, I need 55. Okay, now we're $1,000 apart. Now let's start negotiation. Well, I know that you're, 2 hours out there. I understand that. But this is, if it is a light load, start using your selling points. This is a light load. The temperature's high. You don't have to run the reefer too hard on it. It delivers on this date. If he was posted up that he needs to go to Michigan, use that as a selling point. Say, hey, look, I'm putting you right where you want to go. You probably have a backhaul from up there. I'm going to get you right where you need to go up there. So use those as a selling point up there and try to negotiate that price down. Now you got a price from the carrier. Let's say you got him at $5,000. Okay, he's agreed. I'll deadhead from Laredo down to McAllen. I'll pick up your load for $5,000 and I'll take it up to Michigan. Solo carrier or team driver, whatever the case may be. All right, so now you have your price. Now you're gonna go back to your customer and you're gonna add on your margin. Now before you go do that, you also wanna take a look on these load boards. There's a thing called lane makers. And lane makers are trucks that post historically in those areas or on that lane that consistently run that. And it's gonna give you the information. How often are they posting? How many trucks are they posting? So use that information. If that's a lane that they run very, very regularly, then keep that carrier in mind. You want to add that to your system, because if they're constantly running that lane, you can get them for a better price. If you're just buying a truck and he doesn't really want to go to that area, you're going to pay more. But if you get a carrier that consistently runs that lane, that tells you that he needs that lane for probably his back haul or his front haul to get another load from up there. So you can get them at a cheaper price. So take a look at your lane makers and see who's posting out there. Make some calls to them. Get some pricing from them, see if it matches up with what you got on the spot market from the guy that you just got a price from. And then also look in your TMS. If you've ran that load before, do a historical search in your TMS and see if you've ran that lane before or something specifically around that area. So again, in the TMS, you can segregate the loads or the lanes, and you can do a expanded search. So see how far out you've actually ran loads. Maybe you didn't run any loads from McAllen to Michigan, but maybe you ran them from Dallas to Michigan, or maybe you ran them from Houston to Michigan, or maybe you ran them from Laredo to Michigan. So look at those lanes that you've ran in that area before, and look at the pricing that you paid on that before, and then also call those carriers that you've used on those lanes before and see if they're able to do it, or see how often they're down there and able to do that. Now, once you have that pricing, now obviously you want to go back to your customer and you want to make an offer. So this is where it becomes tricky. Again, you don't want to leave money on the table, but you don't want to price yourself out either. So you know what the market is doing based off of your research. You've talked to multiple carriers, you've talked to your lane makers, you know what you've ran it for in the past inside of your TMS, or somebody else has ran it inside your company on that TMS. And again, that's another good point. You could be talking to people inside your company that run that lane pretty consistently and say, hey, what do you think I'm gonna pay on this? Get some information from them. Just because you haven't ran it doesn't mean one of your counterparts hasn't ran it, or somebody inside the system has ran it. So see what they're doing with it. But now you go back to the customer and you got to negotiate it. So if it's picking up that day, it's a hot load for them. You know, they just got it across for them. They're obviously having problems. So you can price it a little bit higher. If it's going out next week, you're going to want to price a little bit more competitively. And the reason I say that is because they're still waiting on pricing from other companies. You're not the only one pricing it. Again, so you want to be competitive with it. And when you're being competitive with it, you need to ask yourself, you know, what do I need to make on this load in order for it to make sense? Obviously, you're taking some risk out there by being the broker. You know, your relationship with your client, if you do bad, or not you, the carrier does bad on the shipment, maybe he shows up late for shipping, maybe he shows up late for drop, whatever the case may be, maybe he's got damages and claims, and we'll talk about that in a second. But you're taking some risk here with the carriers. So when you price it, what makes sense? You know, a lot of people or a lot of companies say, hey, I want to live in the 9% margin range, 10% margin range, 12%, whatever the case may be. But you want to make it competitive and you want to get your foot in the door. If this is a normal client or somebody you're already doing business with, you can price it differently because they know your service level, they know your communication, they know how well you do, so you can be a little bit more aggressive with your pricing. If it's a brand new prospect or a brand new client, then you're going to want to be much more competitive with your pricing. So you're going to want to go in low on your margin. Don't shoot for the stars and say, I want to make $600 on this load. You're probably going to price yourself out, especially if it doesn't move for a couple days. If it's moving the same day, you might get lucky. But if not, you want to price it low. So I would go in, typically around a 6% margin. Maybe make a couple $100 on it. And yes, that's low on a shipment that you're billing $5,000 on and you're taking a lot of risk on. But you want the opportunity, one, to get your foot in the door. That's the name of the game here, is to get your foot in the door with new clients. So price competitively. Then you can justify higher rates with your service after you've shown that.
Right.
So going competitively with your pricing, with your client, based off of what you know you're going to pay the carrier on a new prospect, going competitively and show them your service level. Show them your communication. Show them that you can get it done on time. They're not going to have to worry about it. You're taking time, putting time back on their plate so they have other things to do inside the company, and get it done. So you can go leaner on the margins with new prospects, and you can go higher on the margins with current prospects, if that makes sense.
After you've done...
Yeah, after you've done a number of loads with them. Again, if you've done one load with them, again, don't shoot for the moon, because again, you're going to price yourself out and they're going to say, hey, his prices are, way too much. Don't do that to yourself. Keep your margins low to begin with and really show them that you're someone that they can rely on to not only pick up the shipment on time, but deliver it on time, and you got good communication throughout the transit. We've talked about that in other podcasts, the communication level that you need with these clients. That's what they really rely on. They don't want to have to be chasing down their trucks. If they've given you 10 loads, they want you to report on those 10 loads before they have to call out and say, where are my trucks? Don't be that person. You want to be ahead of the game, get them their information, their updates before they ever even think about passing on the updates to their sales team. So once you get the shipments in, you get a couple shipments under your belt, then you can slowly start to notch it up. And you're going to have to notch it up regardless. Throughout the year, the markets change. If it's dead in one area for a month, the next month, something might be coming out, something might be happening. Even if you're running dry vans, like in the middle of the summertime, this is a good example. In the middle of the summertime, if you're running dry vans out of Florida, and your carriers are used to running dry vans out of Florida, during the summertime or during the springtime, the market changes considerably. So from November in Florida till March in Florida, dry van pricing is very, very cheap. It's competitive. I mean, you're paying them a little more than their gas just to get them out of there. There's not a lot of freight coming out of there, so they're willing to take it at cheaper prices. Now comes March. When March comes in, now you have a bunch of field stuff happening down in Florida. You got bin watermelons, you got peppers, squash, eggplant, all this stuff, and a lot of this stuff can be run on dry vans with vents in them. And so what these carriers will do is they'll go down to their local truck stop and they'll have produce vents put in their vans. Basically what that means is in the front of the truck, they're going to have the truck stop cut a hole in their van, put a vent in it, and in the back on one of the doors, they're going to do the same thing. That way air pushes through there, because these products don't necessarily need to be refrigerated because they're coming straight out of the field, so they can use them on vented vans. So now this van carrier that was getting paid a little more than gas money to come out has transitioned over to moving produce, and he wants more money because he's moving produce, even though he's not a reefer carrier.
Yeah.
But he's still moving produce. So if you were paying him $1.89 a mile up until March, you can expect in the springtime, from March until June, until the Florida season ends, you're going to be paying probably close to $3 a mile. So don't count on those carriers to be doing the same pricing the entire time. So again, when markets fluctuate, that's why it's important to be up on the markets and understand what's going on with the markets. If you don't know what's going on with the markets, you're going to get yourself in a real bad pinch with pricing. I mean, I've seen guys lose as much as $2,000 on a load. That's a heavy hit, and if it's not your company and you're working for somebody else, you better believe you're going to get a call from your manager. What the hell happened here? Well, I mispriced it.
Yeah.
No shit. I can see that.
Right.
You know, so you want to know the markets.
That is a good segue into how to, so when you get your customer and things go wrong, because that will happen no matter how good you are.
Can't avoid it.
Right. So number one, how do you deal with that in the first place? Say, you know, something happened in the process, like the carrier got there late. There's some problems with the shipment itself. Like, well, number one, what are the most common problems that you have faced as a broker in the past?
So I would think the most common problem is going to be late to delivery, and that really plays off of a lot of different aspects. You know, I mean, these guys are traveling thousands of miles, so there's a lot that can happen in between origin and destination. I mean, they could run into traffic, they could run into construction, road closures, whatever the case may be, weather, especially during the wintertime when loads get closed. I mean, there's some passings up in Washington that there's only one way in and out, and if they close those passings due to snow, obviously he's going to be delayed. The biggest thing comes back to here is communication. If we're going to be late for delivery, own the problem. Just be upfront with it. Hey, we're running late, we're running behind. Give him a new ETA, give him a current location, current mileage, where he's at, and then explain why we're running late. If it was due to traffic, due to weather, you'd be in your best interest to pull up something from that area online. I mean, we all have access to the internet. Use your resources. You know, find out if what the carrier is saying is true. Is the pass closed? You can do some quick research and find out, yep, the pass is closed. Send them a news article on that, or send them an update from the local DOT that says the pass is closed and they don't expect it to reopen for whatever amount of time. Give them the proof of why he's going to be late. Another reason that he could be late is due to loading. Everybody in this business knows that they don't roll out the red carpet when the truck gets there and be like, yeah, come on in the door, man, we got you. We'll have you in and out and inside of 15 minutes. Doesn't happen like that, especially when you're talking food products or produce. I mean, I've seen guys wait 48 hours to load, especially down at the border. You know, when trucks are crossing from Mexico to the U.S., they have to be inspected. They have to go through Border Patrol, Homeland Security. The trucks get inspected not only for drugs and for illegal aliens, but they also get inspected for invasive species like fruit flies or beetles or whatever the case may be. And that's not just in the food or in the shipment, that's also in their pallets. There's beetles that hide inside of pallets. They bury themselves in there and they got larvae in there. And so the Border Patrol will go in there and they'll randomly sample pallets and see if you know, there's any kind of invasive species. And if there is, they'll either turn them away or they'll have to fumigate them, whatever the case may be. But if you have problems or delays at loading, that could be another reason. So again, this comes down to communication and sending out your reports to your clients. You know, be honest with them. Hey, truck checked in down here. Let him know when he checked in. The minute he checks in, truck's checked in, waiting to load. Give him another update. Hey, truck's still waiting to load. No door yet. And then continue that process until they actually get loaded. Now, if it took him 8, 9, 10 hours to load, relay that. I'll give you another ETA in the morning after we get some miles underneath us, and I'll see if we're still on time for delivery. But we did lose 8 to 10 hours at loading, so we may be delayed. But the biggest thing is to be very, very upfront with it. Don't hide it from your client. Don't give them a false sense of security that you're going to be on time when you know damn well they're not going to be on time. The truck told you he's not going to be on time. Don't relay something and then have to turn around and tell them something different. Just get it out there and deal with it right then and there. That's one of the biggest issues with late deliveries. And it can be dealt with through communication and explaining it. And I'm not saying that the customer is going to be happy about it, because they probably won't be. They expect it there in a certain time. But again, these guys aren't driving rocket ships. You know, they can't go from Texas to Michigan in one day. It's not going to happen. It doesn't matter if it's a team driver. It's not going to happen. You can only cover so many miles per day. Even if you can run the truck round the clock with 2 drivers, you can only cover so many miles. And you're still going to run into construction. You're still going to run into rush hour, all those things that could delay your shipments. Now, the other thing that you have to worry about is claims or damage to product.
Yeah.
Now, typically, you're not going to know that until they get to the receiver.
Gotcha.
You know, unless they get in an accident, God forbid, if they get in an accident, that's a real easy one to handle. That's a quick call to the insurance. You gather the information, the police reports, all of that stuff, get some pictures. If it's a total loss, maybe it's not a total loss. Maybe it's just the truck is damaged a little bit and you got to cross dock it, something like that.
So you call the insurance, or is it, how does that work?
So you will. So there's a couple different ways you can do that. One, the carrier can handle it, calling the insurance and looping you in, or you can call the insurance. But generally, the carrier will call the insurance, especially in the instance of an accident. He's going to call their insurance immediately because he wants to get his truck fixed and probably get the claim process rolling. It's not a overnight thing. You know, you can expect 30 to 180 days before a claim is solved. So they will probably call the insurance company themselves, loop you in on it, give you the adjuster's name, contact, email, phone number, and then you can follow up that way. Or you can call them yourself and say, hey, I want to file a claim. This is what happened. You have all the information. You submit it. I would still loop in the carrier, because chances are you are not an additional insured. And maybe we should talk about that real quick. When you contract a carrier, they're going to provide you their insurance. And generally what companies do is have you placed as a certificate holder. A certificate holder is different than being an additional insured. So when you say, hey, I want to be a certificate holder on the insurance, they're going to send you over your insurance, and it's going to say your company is a certificate holder. Certificate holder is nothing more than the insurance company recognizing that you contract with this truck, and they are saying, as you being a certificate holder, we're going to notify you of any changes in their insurance. So if they up the policy, lower the policy, renew the policy, cancel the policy, you're going to be notified. You're not additional insured. You're just there for communication. Additional insured means you can act as the carrier. So you are insured completely under that policy, which means you can work directly with the insurance company for the claim, and payments will be made directly to you in that event. Now, with the additional insured, a lot of carriers won't do that. And the reason they won't do that is because it costs them more money. So if you say, hey, I want to be an additional insured, chances are you're not going to get that carrier, 1, to do it, and 2, probably to do your load. So it's pretty standard in the industry just to be a certificate holder. Okay, so we've defined that, but now you still have the claim, you have the process. Let's say it's not an accident. Let's say you get to the receiver and you're talking to the truck, and the truck says, okay, they rejected the product for damage. Now we have to gather some information. What's the damage? What happened? Find that out. Get some pictures. Let's see what the product looks like. Let's see how bad the damage is. But we find out exactly why they rejected it and the damages, and we get a copy of the bill of lading with the rejection noted on it, because the receiver is going to note it on there. And as soon as they reject the load, your customer already knows. They've already sent the email.
Oh, gotcha.
So you might as well get right on the horn and start talking to them immediately. Hey, we have a rejection due to damage. If that's the case, a couple different things can happen here, and it really depends on the commodity that you're hauling. Let's say, God forbid, you have seafood or ice cream. If you have ice cream and you have damage on ice cream, let's say it's melted, there's no resale value. You're not going to resale it. It's just scrapped. So it's a full truck claim, or however much product you have in there.
Yeah.
Let's say you have seafood. It was damaged for temperature, too warm. Again, you can't resell it. It's not going to the market. You're looking at foodborne illness there. Nobody wants to put that to market. Again, it's another full truckload claim. Let's say you're looking at canned goods and it's just tipped over pallets and you got some damage to the cans. They may be able to salvage it through a secondary sale, through a market, or through a food bank, or they may have you donate it. Whatever the case may be, you're still going to be on the hook for the value of that product. But let's say it's produce. produce, typically maybe you have some tipped over pallets, maybe the pallet or the cases are crushed, maybe it ran too warm and it's starting to shrivel up. Again, something like that, they can probably resell it to a secondary vendor and you can get some value out of the product. That's best case scenario. And so typically the claim is easier with different types of products and not so much with other types of products. So it depends on what you're doing. But once you have a claim, you're going to have to work with the carrier on it and you're going to have to work with the customer. If it's a full claim and they're going to dump it, no salvage availability, then you're going to have to work with the carrier to get it offloaded somewhere and dumped in a dumpster, which just sucks because you just wasted a bunch of food. You got a high value claim there. Maybe they want to donate it for a tax write-off, so you send it over to a food bank. We've done that a number of times. You send it over to a food bank. They take it in. They give you a tax receipt that you can use as a tax write-off to offset your costs. Now, it's not going to cover the cost of the product, obviously, but you can offset it by a couple $100, maybe $1,000, a couple $1,000, depending on the product. But once you have that claim, you call the customer, you tell them why. They determine, not you, they determine what's going to happen with that product. Either it's going to be resold and they're going to give you a place to take it, or they're going to tell you it's yours, you own it, truck owns it, dump it, do whatever you want to do with it, I'll send you an invoice. Once you know the damage amount and you have the invoice from the client, now we got to go back to the carrier. When you're dealing with the carrier on a claim, it really depends on how you set up your carrier contracts. I recommend everybody out there to put some kind of verbiage into their carrier contract that you're able to hold their line haul of what you were paying them and any money on the books that you have with them that hasn't been paid yet to offset that claim. That limits your liability because you can take money that you have not paid them yet and use it to offset the claim. That is best case scenario. So if your contracts don't read like that, I would highly recommend you get with an attorney and you get those contracts revamped so that it includes that verbiage because it's going to limit your liability and your headaches in the future. So let's say you don't have that verbiage in there. You can tell the carrier, hey, I'm holding your pay on this load. I'm going to use it to offset the claim, but I was paying you $5,000. The claim amount is $25,000. So right now you have a liability of $20,000. So what you want to do at this point is you want to engage the insurance company again. You can ask the carrier, are you going to submit it to your insurance company or do you want me to handle that and submit it too? So now you're kind of working for them too, you know, trying to help them out by doing the legwork because it is a process. So if they do it, they're going to handle all that. They're going to loop you in. You send them the invoice. They're going to have all the other paperwork, their carrier rate confirmation, the bill of lading, the pictures. They're going to have all that. If you do it yourself, again, you take the same paperwork, the invoice, the bill of lading, the pictures. You call the carrier company. You tell them I want to initiate a cargo claim. They're going to gather some information from you. They're going to ask you to send over those documents. They are going to send it to the adjuster. They're going to tell you who the adjuster is. They're going to give you their contact name, phone number, and they're going to give you a claim number. Then it's a matter of following up on it repetitively to make sure that the claim process is moving along and that it gets paid. Not every time it gets paid. Be prepared for that. Sometimes they're going to kick it and say, you know what, the carrier's at fault here, you know, due to their policy and the verbiage in the policy because of this or that, we're not going to pay it. So now you have to work it out with the carrier. But even while you're working it out with the carrier, let's say best case scenario, the insurance company says, yep, we're going to pay it, no problem. They cut you a check. They either send it to the carrier or they send it to you. They may say, we'll send it directly to you, no problem. They send it directly to you. Before that, they're going to get a release of liability over to you. It's a form you sign. It's going to release them of any liability after they make that payment. There's themselves, their affiliates, the carrier. We've made the payment. You can't come after us in the future if anything changes. Sign it, send it back. You get the check. You forward it on to your customer. Well, actually, you'll cash the check. You'll write another check, send it on to your customer. That's best case scenario. And worst case scenario is that they kick the claim and you don't have the verbiage in your contract that says I can offset any money I have in the books with you to offset this claim. That's worst case scenario. So now you know the insurance company's completely out. They're not paying it, so now it's between you and the carrier. Now you got to call the carrier and see what kind of carrier this is, what kind of ethics they have, what kind of reputation they have, and you're going to know immediately. Either they're going to say, hey, I'll pay the claim, or they're going to completely ghost you. That typically what happens is they ghost you and just say, I'm walking away from it, I'm not doing it. So you may have to sue them at that point. You may have to file a lawsuit, and you may have to go to court and get a judgment or a summary judgment if they don't appear, and you're going to have to handle it that route. The other thing that you can do when you present a claim to the carrier is you can try to mitigate their loss. And I like doing this process much better because it's easier to work with the carrier. If it's a high value claim, whether it's $25,000 or $100,000, that carrier may not have that money, just liquid. So you can say, hey, look, I understand it's a problem. I'm not mad at you. Shit happens. Let's work something out. Let's work out a payment plan and let's get that paid off. So come to an agreement on whatever you're going to get paid monthly or weekly or bi-weekly with that carrier until it's paid off. Once you work out that payment plan, make sure you get a signed document of them agreeing to that. I always go with a personal guarantee in that instance. So I'll talk to the owner of the carrier company. You've agreed to this, $5,000 a month until the claim is paid. I'm going to send you over a personal guarantee document. What I need you to do is read it over. The terms of the payments are in there. Here's the start date. Here's the end date. Here's every payment schedule that's going to happen. Have them sign it. Have them send in a copy of their driver's license. Now you got some teeth, because if they default on those payments and they start ghosting you after that, you can take that document and you can, again, go to the court, file a lawsuit directly with the carrier, but also on that personal individual, because he gave you a personal guarantee. Now, on that personal guarantee, that says even if he shuts down his company, you can go after his personal assets against his social security number and collect that payment. So personal guarantees are the best way to do that if you enter into a payment agreement or a payment option to pay down that claim. Let's say you can't get that, the carrier just ghosts you completely, you can't get a hold of them, you're going to file the lawsuit regardless, you probably will get a summary judgment on it, but then you actually have to go collect it. But before you do all of that, that's going to take a lot of time. That could take you up to a year to complete, and there's no guarantee that you're going to collect that money. Now comes the hard part. You have to satisfy your customer. If you don't satisfy your customer on the claim, you're not going to get any more freight. You may be getting some freight during that time while you're working out the claim, but if they feel that you're not going to pay the claim, chances are they're going to deduct it from your payables. So if you've taken a bunch of loads from them and you haven't paid them the claim and they're not seeing any movement on it, they're probably going to say, you know what, you owe us $50,000. We got $40,000 in payables on loads that you ran for us. We're just going to hold that $40,000. Now you owe us $10,000. So one way or the other, they're going to get their money. So work it out with your client. You're going to have to come to some kind of agreement with your client if you want to maintain business with them. If you don't pay the claim, it's a 100% chance that you're not going to see any more freight from them. You're just not. They don't trust you. It goes back to your word. You told them that you would handle everything. You're the intermediary between them and the carrier. So in their eyes, you share the exact same responsibility as the carrier. They don't care if the carrier didn't pay. They didn't contract the carrier. They contracted you. So you're responsible for it. And that's how they're going to take it. So, same thing. If you can't pay it in full right away, try to work out a payment schedule with them. If you can deduct it from your payables, if that's easier, then go ahead and do that. But you definitely want to be on top of your game when you're dealing with claims with customers, because if you don't pay the customer, you're not getting any more freight. You can think outside the box and come up with something fancy to get them repaid, or just swipe a check and send it out to them. Either way, you're going to have to pay the claim, or you're not getting more freight. And if you value that client and you want to keep a relationship with them, then pay the claim. And then you also have to look at, okay, maybe I have to pay a claim, but how much have I actually made off of the client thus far? How much am I going to make off the client in the future? The past year, I've made $200,000 in profit off the customer being their broker. I owe him $50,000. Is it worth walking away from him? Will I make another $200,000? Yeah, I diluted my profit because I have to swipe a check for $50,000. But if I maintain a good relationship with this customer and show them that I stand behind, what I'm doing over here as a company, they're still going to do business with you, and you'll continue to get freight, and you'll make up that $50,000 that you had to swipe out. And at the end of the day, it just came out of your profit anyway. It diluted your profit a little bit, but you're still getting money from them in the future. If you don't pay the claim, you're not making any money off of them in the future. So that $200,000, Maybe they deducted it from your payable, so you're down to $150,000 in profit, and because they had to deduct it from your payable because you wouldn't pay it, you're not getting any more freight.
Yeah.
So in essence, you really only made 150 grand off of that client. You're not making anything in the future.
Yeah.
So with claims, I like to handle them very direct. Work with the client on it, make sure they get paid, don't beat around the bush, don't ghost them, keep them up to date, work it on the carrier side, work it on the customer side. You're going to have to deal with claims at some point as a broker. It's just going to happen. You can mitigate claims by dealing with carriers over and over again by getting some payables on the books, getting that verbiage changed in your contract, using reputable carriers. That would be my recommendation. But you're going to deal with claims at some point. It's just going to happen.
Which is great. So now, one thing you mentioned though is vetting carriers, making sure that's a way to limit the amount of claims that you might deal with in the future.
Yep.
So how do you go? What is your process, or what do you recommend people do when they go out in the market and they start vetting carriers?
Sure, that's a good question.
What are some things that
So a lot of companies do it differently. Everybody has their playbook that they go by when signing up new carriers in their system. Whether you work for a company or it's your company and you're the owner of the brokerage, vetting carriers is an important part of your business because they ultimately are representing you too. I mean, your reputation is how they perform and how they act. So vetting carriers is important. Rule of thumb here is, and I know this sucks, but it sucks for new carriers. It sucks for you, especially if you got a good price on a carrier. But I would not use anybody that hasn't been in business for a minimum of 6 months. That's just my rule of thumb here. That tells me if you got a brand new carrier, he's a one truck operation, he's the owner, he's the operator, it's real easy for him to disappear. It's real easy for him to shut down his business, his authority, get it off the books, walk away from a bad debt, and restart another company. He's still going to maintain the truck. He still owns the truck, but now he's shut down his LLC. He walks away from his bad debt. He starts another company, and he's back in business, and you're still out the money.
Yeah.
If they've been in business for 6 months and they got one truck, you're still running a pretty big risk because they only got one truck and they could still do the same thing. But chances are, they've done enough loads, they understand the market, they've probably done a good enough job to maintain a business up to the 6 month point. But when I'm vetting carriers, rule of thumb is 6 months for me. But I also like to work with carriers that have more than one truck. Again, if you're a one truck operation, it's easy for you to walk away from bad debt and restart another company, and your reputation doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? But if you have a company that you source that has 5 or more trucks, it's much more difficult for them. One, they've been in business for probably a lot longer, probably a couple years now because they have 5 trucks. And as we all know, trucks aren't cheap. They didn't just open their doors yesterday and say, hey, I got 5 trucks. I purchased 5 trucks. I'm going to make this work. They probably started out with 1 truck. They did good business. They were profitable, and they bought more trucks because they were bringing on more business. So if they have 5 trucks or more, then they have a little bit more skin in the game. They probably have a better reputation out there in the market. So that's another good thing to look for. How many trucks do they have on with the FMCSA? How many are registered? How many are showing on their insurance? If they have multiple trucks, it's harder for them to shut down their company and to restart another company and get up and running again because they got to change the name. Then they have to sign up with all their clients that they've been doing business with again. And again, they're back at zero. And a lot of companies won't allow you to come in and work for them unless you have 6 months or more on your authority. So that's a good way to vet carriers. Check out the number of trucks that they have, and then how long have they been in operation. Once you do that, you significantly lower your risk of carriers ghosting you on claims.
Right.
Significantly.
What about when it comes to the the on-time like the service of the carrier itself? Like how do you vet for carriers that are reliable, that know how to avoid damage in their products and all that stuff?
Yeah, so that really comes down to you when you're sourcing the truck and when you're dispatching the truck. So we talked about the sourcing already, but when it's time for the truck to go pick up the load, I wouldn't be just talking to the dispatch. You want to talk to the drivers. Get the driver's number, get their information, call and talk to the drivers, get a relationship with them, be nice, be cordial, get a feel for how they're talking and what they're doing. And when you're dispatching them, make sure you're very clear on your instructions. Make sure you're very clear on what time the pickup is, what time the delivery is. Do we have fresh hours on our ELD if they're a solo driver? If they're team drivers, make sure you're talking to both drivers. Make sure they're both in the truck. But then also with the claims, damaged product, make sure that you're telling them how many load locks they need or how many E-tracks or load straps. Verify that with them. And then also after they've picked it up, it's the same thing. Verify it again. Make them tell you how many load bars they have up, load locks, E-tracks, straps on the shipment. Hell, get a picture so you can see for yourself how they have it secured. That's a good way to do it. If you don't like how it's secured, tell them you need to add more to this, and this is the reason why. And then also make sure if it's a refrigerated shipment, make sure they understand the temperature that it needs to be ran at, and almost everything out there is continuous, not cycling, so make sure they understand it's continuous. One thing I like to do when I'm talking about refrigerated trucks is after I talk to the carrier and I talk about temperature, it's not a scare tactic, it's a in the back of their mind tactic. I tell them, whether there is or isn't, and usually there is, but even if there's not, I tell them that there's a temperature recorder inside the truck. It's inside one of the pallets. You don't know which one. I don't know which one, but they can see the temperature in transit. And they're going to check that Tive tracker or that tracker when they get Locust Tracks, Tive, GeoTrack, whatever it may be. They're going to check that temperature monitor when they get to the facility. And if they see that you've ran it on cycling or the temperature deviated a couple degrees either way, they may kick it for a claim, for a temperature claim. So tell them that we have monitoring on the truck. We're going to be monitoring your temperature. Make sure you're running it at continuous, not cycling. So make sure that you do that. And then again, you can also get a picture from, hey, I know you're loaded. I've seen the load locks up there. Everything looks good. Send me a picture of your reefer and the set point. If they send you a picture of your reefer, you're going to see the inside temperature of the trailer on the left-hand side, and then typically on the right-hand side of that picture, you're going to see what's called a set point. And the set point is what they have it set at. So make sure you see that on there. If it's not at the set point that you told them about, make sure that you get on the phone, you relay that information again, and make sure the temperature is correct. That's the best way to do it.
Perfect. Yeah. And then one last thing before we wrap it up. Yeah. So how do you maintain, because, you know, one of the things that you really preach about is like becoming a niche expert, right? Becoming a niche expert, because if you're dabbling into many other sectors, you don't have the nuance and the expertise to really, you know, ask or recommend those things to the carriers or learn or know how to deal with all that stuff. So speak a little bit about, you know, how important it is for you to like be the person, the expert in a certain niche.
Sure. So you're going to gravitate towards whatever type of freight that you like. It doesn't matter if it's refrigerated, dry van, flatbed, heavy haul, doesn't matter. You're going to find your niche and you're going to know what it is right away. And how you're going to know that is because the shipments excite you. Something about moving that commodity or being in that vertical excites you. It drives you every day to do your best. Once you have that, you want to be the subject matter expert in that field. So if you're doing refrigerated, don't say, hey, I'm going to dabble over here in heavy haul. They're completely different. Obviously, they're completely different. So you're going to be talking completely different to each customer. A reefer customer is not going to know what you're talking about to a heavy haul customer and vice versa. So if you're doing heavy haul, then be a heavy haul expert. Learn everything there is to know about it, the trailer configurations, what's needed on those, what they typically haul, who the companies are that need the heavy haul. Same thing with refrigerated, same thing with dry van, flatbed. And that's going to help you source more customers down the road too, because once you're a subject matter expert in that particular vertical, you know everything about it. You understand how it moves, what's needed for it to move, what those clients expect on those moves, and it makes the conversation so much easier when you're talking to the client. And then also you get more business by being in one vertical than dabbling all around the map with different verticals in the transportation industry. And the reason I say that is because a lot of it is word of mouth too. So you can parlay success with one customer and get another customer because they said, hey, I'm using a guy over here, or hey, this guy might need a truck over here. And then you can do some correlation too, or some connection with the same shipping lanes that you're currently working because you know the pricing on them. So definitely find what motivates you daily in whatever vertical you're working, and then become the subject matter expert on it. And then you're going to have a much better conversation with clients, with prospects that you're trying to sign on, because you are talking their talk. You know everything about it. What they're talking immediately resonates with you, and you're able to have a fluid conversation with them back. You understand their needs, you understand their challenges, you understand the pricing, you understand what's entailed with the shipments that you're moving on, and that makes the sale so much easier. So I would recommend being a subject matter expert in one particular vertical and then using that to build around your business. Not to say you're not going to hire somebody else in that's going to be an expert in something else. That's okay, and you can learn through them, but don't be all over the board with it. If you want to do dry van, then really focus on dry van. If you want to do reefer, then really focus on reefer. If you want to do heavy haul, then really focus on heavy haul.
Yeah. So, perfect. So, that is it for today. We do have a website. It's called the Freight Brokerage Mastery. We will be launching a course soon. So, for if you're a broker or agent or someone that wants to start a brokerage from scratch, it will walk you through literally step by step everything that you know that you need to know to build a successful brokerage and a successful book of business. So
yeah, that's a blueprint. I mean, you guys got to check this out. It's a blueprint, and I've said it before in other podcasts. I wish I had a blueprint to help you be successful as a broker, but this is one that has a blueprint, and if you follow it, you will be set up for success to open your doors for the brokerage. It is literally laid out for you from step by step what you need to do at the beginning to the end to open your brokerage, and then after that it's about building your business. But you guys need to check it out. If you follow it step by step, you're going to be ready to open your doors.
Yes, sir. So hit the link below so that you can sign up for the waiting list, and then also just subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our Spotify so you can keep hearing this podcast. We'll be launching once a week. And so if you have any questions, also email us. We're always happy to help you guys with anything that has to do with brokerage.
Yeah, I want to see you guys succeed, man. If you have any questions, shoot us an email. I'll either answer them in a podcast or I'll reach out to you directly and answer those questions. I want to see you guys succeed. That's what this is about, is making you guys successful and seeing you guys build your company up. That's what we're trying to do here. We know how to do it. We've done it before. We want to help you do it. We want to see you do it, and we want to hear the results. If you're having results and you found something interesting, something helpful that was on here, or something that you've seen, or you've used the Freight Brokerage Mastery, let us know. We'll be happy to talk about it in a future podcast.
All right. Sounds good.
Cool.
Sounds good, man.